So, how's life? Yeah, I'm done with this place. Wait, what? Hello everyone and welcome to the new and improved HatsOff. I'm your host and sleep paralysis demon, D'Angelo Edwards. I hope you guys like the new look. We've got some new equipment, some exciting new features to show off. I almost died. Keyword is almost. It's always almost. Isn't it though? But enough about your endless torment, let's talk about something important. Something that a lot of people can relate to. I heard that's what YouTube likes, and I'm nothing if not a sellout, so let's go. Back when I was a wee lad, the world was a simpler place. We had 3D Doritos, and the cartoons were better because they were the ones I grew up with. I also had to go to school, and if you think this is where I segue into my man I could never do good in academics story, you're wrong. Your boy used to kill it in class. I used to be a smart kid cause it earned me a lot of praise. And as someone who needs near constant validation, it was sweet. I didn't like school, but being told you're gifted hits different as a kid. Did it set me up for failure later in life? Who knows, we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about that one magical break in the school year where you got to put away your books, flip off the teacher and go to the gymnasium to be transported into a magical world of literature. That's right, I'm talking the Scholastic Book Fair. This was a program launched by Scholastic to make sure that at least half the kids ended up literate. And judging by how many times I had to respell school in this script, it probably wasn't a foolproof plan. But it was great. I love reading. Dork! 1, because it earns me praise, again, constant validation. 2, it was like cartoons in my head. And 3, when you read an actual book in public, you look super intimidating. Like, whoa, you brought that out the house? What are you, a psycho? Better not talk to that guy. I bet he knows compound words. But in the book fair, I think we can all agree that there were 3 main players that caught the kids' attention. These aren't up for debate either, just deal with the fact that I'm right. You had Animorphs, which was more hardcore than Hunger Games ever was. Harry Potter, which led to the creation of the worst type of people, myself included. And what I want to focus on today, Captain Underpants. Captain Underpants is one of, if not the most important children's series ever to exist. This is not hyperbole. I truly believe this. It's a series that is unabashedly and undeniably for kids. And I don't mean that in a bad way. There are lots of children's books and franchises that are amazing for kids growing up. Stuff like Junie B. Jones, Dr. Seuss, and so on. But those books don't do what Captain Underpants does. Sure, they entertain kids and they even teach them some stuff. But Captain Underpants' main goal is something that I think is much more important. It befriends them. Captain Underpants at its core isn't a book that gets kids to read because of toilet humor or cartoony characters. That stuff is important, but it's just part of the puzzle. Captain Underpants is a book that makes reading feel fun. It makes the kids reading it feel accomplished. There is no attempt to make it something that adults wouldn't mind reading to their kids. I'm sure some adults would like reading them. I still love them, but these books are for kids, with no extra thought given to the adult's enjoyment. The only thing that matters is that the kid enjoys it, and that's really special. But before I go into the elements that make it special, I want to talk about the series itself. So join me as I take my hat off to Captain Underpants. Created by Dave Pilkey, Captain Underpants tells the story of George Beard and Harold Hutchkins. George is the kid with the tie and the flat top. Harold is the kid with the shirt and the bad haircut. Remember that now. They are 2 best friends who love nothing more than having a good time playing pranks and making comic books. But they live in a world full of literally the meanest, dumbest, and most stubborn adults ever to exist on the planet. Like they live for the suffering of children. It's honestly pretty funny just seeing how evil they can be. Like the sign in front of their principal's desk says "Kneel here." That doesn't exactly scream I love kids now, does it? Though it is a good idea, I'll need to look into that. But George and Harold are constantly getting into trouble, both in and out of school. Not because they're bad kids, they're just kids. Kids have near infinite energy and they gotta burn it off somehow. And when you're a kid that's ruled by their imagination, let me tell you, you are bound to get into some trouble. But this trouble lands them into some very hot water with Mr. Crump, their principal. Probably the biggest trouble they've ever been in. So to get themselves out, they order a hypno ring and use it to hypnotize Mr. Crump into thinking he's Captain Underpants, a character from their comics. This is funny at first, but it eventually leads to them fighting real supervillains, going on real adventures, and eventually led to Captain Underpants getting real powers. And you get to see every silly step of the way over the course of 12 epic novels. Not books, novels. This is a cultured product. I'm sorry if you lack the palate to indulge in the invasion of the incredibly naughty cafeteria ladies from outer space and the subsequent assault of the equally evil lunchroom zombie nerds. But for real though, these books were tons of fun. George and Harold are some of the most likable and relatable kid characters ever created. They play jokes on people, they obsess over comics, they have trouble in school. A lot of kids' characters seem to teeter on the extreme. They're either like really smart, near geniuses in school, or they're D-Dub Man. But George and Harold are smart, just not like book smart. Dave Pilkey put a lot of himself into these characters. Having been diagnosed with both ADHD and dyslexia, Dave had a lot of trouble in school. He would get in trouble for goofing off, and he had a lot of trouble reading. This led to him getting sent into the hall a lot. But while he was there, he would just draw comics. This is where Captain Underpants came from. Dave wasn't a bad kid, he just wasn't a standard kid. And school tends to favor uniformity. If you don't fit in, they would rather get you out of there than accommodate. But time and time again, George and Harold are proved to be capable. Saving the world, fighting evil, while still making time to make an occasional fart joke. It was also nice to see a black kid front and center with George as well. Also, having the main characters of the book be artists was a huge plus for me. I was a creative kid growing up, and once my gifted phase went away, I focused a lot of my attention on making stuff. I drew comics in my composition notebooks, made paper airplanes, stacked random stuff on my desk, basically everything but schoolwork. And I would get yelled at, as if what I was doing was wrong. Like it was wrong to be creative. But there Dave Pilkey was, not only saying it's okay to be creative, but actively praising me for it. It was nice to see an adult encourage my imagination, instead of stifling it. I was George and Harold, and I think a lot of kids were too. But besides the main characters, we also have, well, all the rest. Captain Underpants features some of the most creative side characters and villains in kids media. Most of the books start with Harold and George making a new comic, and then through various events, some of them the boys' fault and some of them just coincidence, someone in their life gets transformed into a bad guy. Sometimes their teachers get transformed, like with Miserable, turning into the wicked wedgie woman. Also, I forgot to mention, but like a good 80% of the teachers' names are puns, and it's very good. Other times, the threat comes from an outside force, like when aliens took over the lunchroom and turned the kids into zombies. Yeah, these books get kinda wild. The aliens are the reason that starting from book 3 onwards, Captain Underpants has actual powers. And speaking of Captain Underpants, let's talk about him for a bit. Starting off as a creation of George and Harold, he takes form in real life as the alter ego of Mr. Crump, after being hypnotized by the boys. He's a fun character, both as Captain Underpants and as Mr. Crump. When he's Crump, he's so cartoonishly cruel that you can't help but laugh. And as Captain Underpants, it's super fun seeing the different types of ways he manages to save the day. Besides the cool villains and the fun plots, the book is also filled to the brim with visual jokes and play on words. One of the running jokes is that whenever there is a sign around, Harold and George will flip the letters around to make a funny message. Now, some boring adults might argue this is done to help kids with literary skills, like spelling and stuff. And while I'm sure some kids might get that out of it, I'm pretty sure it's just done because it's funny. Mostly everything in these books are done to entertain. A lot of convenient stuff happens just because it's cool or funny. There's no deep meaning or coherence, it's just a silly book that belongs to kids. And that's what's really important. Captain Underpants might be the only book series that completely belongs to kids. And Dave does a lot of interesting things to make sure that kids get the most out of them. First off is the way the books are laid out. The Captain Underpants books have really short chapters. And it's not a mistake, it's a feature. By making the chapters really short, kids will feel like they are breezing past it. Books can feel really intimidating, and it can be a struggle to get past one chapter. But when it's broken down into smaller 5-page chapters, you get a real sense of accomplishment when it's only been half an hour and you're already on chapter 10. That kind of stuff can really foster a kid's reading sense. Another really important thing that people take for granted is that these books are called novels. The word novel is reserved for books that are held in high regards. Real important books like Tom Sawyer, War and Peace, Diane Hansen's Big Book of Butts 3D. You know, stuff that changed the world. But by calling his series novels, and epic novels at that, Dave makes kids think that they just did a great thing. Like, what did you do today, Sally? You watched cartoons and drank juice? Well, I read a novel. I did those other things too, but first I read a novel. And besides the short chapters, the books are loaded with other unique things. Illustrations take up large amounts of the page, which means you get the same amount of story, but without having to rely on just words. A good amount of the story is filled with Dave's patented fliporama technology, which blew my mind as a kid, because the book will all of a sudden be cartoons. Like moving pictures, you guys, it was hype. You even got to read the comics George and Harold drew right there in the book. They had instructions for pranks, the occasional recipe, and all kinds of other fun things. It was great. Not to mention that Dave Pilkey's art style is really appealing, as it was simple enough that it makes kids want to try and draw it. I used to have a spin-off book from Captain Underpants that taught you to draw the characters. And this is back when I could barely draw a stick man. But with the funny illustrations guiding me, I made something legible. And I have Dave and his books to thank for that. And not just Captain Underpants, but his other works as well. I read Dumb Bunnies, and Ricky Ricotta got me into Giant Robots, and Dragon was such a good show for kids, and oh my god, this dude did so much for me. But of course, when someone lets kids have a good time, there is going to be a fair share of backlash. Because of the toilet humor and lack of educational substance, at least on the surface, Captain Underpants has often been challenged by lamos. Even a few schools I went to would ban them, and that's really a shame. There was also some blowback when in the last book, Harold was revealed to be gay in the future. By the way, this was handled really well. There wasn't like any fanfare or anything, it was just treated as normal, which it is. So with all that, a bunch of parents were up in arms about it. When someone makes a book just for you, and someone else comes along and says that it's bad and that you can't have it, I think that hurts a kid more than just reading a dumb book. Captain Underpants was never an inappropriate book. It just wasn't appropriate for some adults. But kids need something like this in their life. Something that sparks their creativity and makes them just want to have fun using their imagination. And for me and a bunch of other kids, that something was Captain Underpants. And the sales figures don't lie. With over 80 million books sold and being translated into 20 different languages, this book has definitely left its mark on the world. And when something makes that big of an impact, big things are sure to follow. Alright guys, D'Angelo here. Before we get back to the video, I have an announcement to make. The fanbase has been growing lately and I think it's high time that we had someplace to gather. So I'm creating a place where all you guys can meet and talk about how much you love my videos. You're starting a community? I'm starting a cult. So look down in the description and you'll find a link to the new community Discord, where you can discuss cartoons, movies, and most importantly, me. I'll be there too, as if you needed any more convincing. So I'll see you there, by force if necessary.
You are now the amazing Captain Underpants! Tra-la-la!
When DreamWorks announced a Captain Underpants movie, I almost vomited my skeleton out. I was so excited. I was also very afraid of what they were going to do to my childhood. I went to go see it with my friend. We saw the pre-show before the Friday premiere, and oh my god, they nailed it so hard. Everything from the look of the movie, to the jokes told, to the actors they cast was perfect. DreamWorks actually outsourced this movie with Micro's Image, the studio that did The Little Prince, which is another movie I'd highly recommend, especially if you like to cry. I'm looking at Jutun. They also did Sherlock Gnome, but I'm in my happy place right now, so I'll move along. This movie is pure joy. It doesn't follow the plot of the books exactly, but it manages to take the plot of 3 books and merge them into a coherent movie. And I've never seen another adaptation handle that so well. The animation is slick and colorful, and because the characters of Captain Underpants all share a similar body shape, extra care could go into the rest of the movie. If I had to nitpick one thing, it's that George and Harold really don't sound like kids. But after a few minutes in, I really didn't care because they put on a good performance and the rest of the movie was so strong. They really nailed the humor of the books too, with jokes that were a little crass but nothing outright disgusting. If anything, it's a little tamer than the books in some areas. They also did a great job with Mr. Krupp, giving him a little more of a sympathetic side, without forgetting that he could be really evil. Plus, with the mixed media jokes, fourth wall breaks, and clever camera work, there was always something visually interesting or hilariously written to keep your attention. I didn't check my phone once during this flick. Do you know how rare that is? But overall, this is one of DreamWorks' best movies in my opinion, and it stands up there with the Peanuts movie in terms of execution, and I really hope we get another one. But if we don't, we have the series to tide us over. That's right, we even got a DreamWorks series based on the movie, because DreamWorks really likes to do this. And while not as good as the movie, it's still a really good partner piece to the books. The humor is snappy, and I like the new voices they got for the boys. In a way, it's even more effective than the movie in bringing the books to life. And I really think that it's a great show for kids. It's currently on its 3rd season, and as long as the passion is there, I think it could go on for a few more. And it should, because Dave Pilkey made something truly special.
Tra-la-la!
Meet George Beard and Harold Hutchins.
Now, let me ask you something. If you could control your principal, what would you do?
Put the pin down, Mr. Krupp, or we'll hypnotize you.
Fear not, I will set you free.
Wow! The terrifying in this town are over.
Mr. Krupp, we gotta do something. Wow, he's on fire. Must have been the butter.
Captain Underpants might be the most important series a child can read. It's a series that drops all formalities, lays it all out on the table. It doesn't try to trick you into learning. It doesn't try to get you to break through the barrier of reading. It gets rid of the barrier and makes it as easy as possible to bring you in, all without pandering. Those years of being secluded and told that he was wrong never broke Dave. It pushed him to create his stories and show kids that just because they're different doesn't mean there's something wrong with them. He told them it was okay to be silly, okay to have fun, okay to just be a kid. Kids need to know that creativity isn't a burden, it's a strength. And as Dave continues to write books for generations to come, I know kids will always have someone to turn to tell them it's cool to just be themselves. You know, it's funny what a bald guy in underpants can teach you, huh?
We have to fill in all of those details ourselves by using our imaginations. The simple fact is, the more we read, the more we get to use our imaginations. And the more we use our imaginations, the more powerful we become.
Also, Dave Pilkey writes all of his books in a cave in Japan, and I didn't know where to fit that in, but that's the coolest thing I ever heard. I love this guy. Bye.